Hey everybody, it's Allie and welcome to our Y&R chat for Sunday, July 27th, 2014. It's a hot summer in Genoa City. Things are definitely heating up. It really feels like everything came to a peak this week. It felt like it was a sweeps week. We had the obvious Stitch blow up of his secret. We had Nikki on trial. It was all very dramatic, and you know, I like usually to lead things off with the hot storyline of the week, but I'm gonna tease you this week because everything was so layered together. I feel like the most logical way to talk about it is to just build up, start kind of chronologically, and get there. So I am going to start out by taking you to the beautiful new rooftop bar in Genoa City. What are we calling it? I'm calling it Sky Bar. Is that the name of it? I don't know. I think it's beautiful. I don't want to forget to mention that there was a couple of scenes this week where not only did we see the rooftop lounge chairs and all that, but we saw kind of a 180 view of it, or a flip side view of it, and there was the beautiful backdrop of Genoa City sparkling in the background. I love it. I have to say, I find this set to be very refreshing, and maybe it's all of the mint. There's a lot of white and mint towels and a lot of mint accents, and I love the curtains and everything they have put up there. It has this really cool pattern on it, and I wanted to ask you guys, what's the name of that pattern? You know how some things are damask or chevron or whatever. There's a pattern that they've used primarily in that set, and I'm dying to know what it is because I like it a lot and I want some for myself. It's very kind of retro. I like it, but alas, more importantly, Summer and Austin are up there kind of getting some hanky-panky going on at the swimming pool, and post hanky-panky, which by the way has been, their relationship has been sexual and also this extreme drama. It's been driven by all of that, and now we're seeing this conversation between them afterward in a semi-quiet private moment where they're sort of realizing that maybe they don't want the same things out of their future. I'm sure it's very difficult for Austin to imagine his future knowing that he's going to be going on trial, as he should be. Summer is completely oblivious to that. She doesn't want to talk about the fact that he might be going to jail, but she is stuck in this fantasy world in a way. She's met her dream man and she wants to build a family with him. Never mind the whole he might be going away to prison for who knows how long thing. She has a dream of having children with him, and maybe even 6 of them, who knows, but 3 would be okay, but possibly 6. And she sees herself, this vision of herself in the future, pushing along this double stroller, and she's thought about it. It's clear that Summer has this dream life that she's probably been thinking about since she was a little girl. That's not uncommon at all, but it's something that she and Austin did not have a chance to discuss before their quickie marriage. And so now it's at a little bit of an impasse. Now these two people are actually getting to know each other. Typically that happens before the marriage, but you know, sometimes it doesn't in Genoa City. And that's certainly not to say that Austin won't come around. He is thinking of his life in terms of, I'm a single guy, I am an artist, I thought maybe I'd travel and backpack and do all of these other things that I really wouldn't be able to do if I had children, and maybe he will evolve that way with Summer. That's yet to be seen, but he certainly does not seem very eager to jump on board with her vision. But it's interesting to note that Summer is already thinking about having kids, and I'm telling you guys, how much do you want to bet that she's gonna end up pregnant possibly by the end of the summer, but definitely by the end of the year, maybe by the end of the month, I don't know, but I have this feeling that she's going to end up pregnant, probably just in time for Austin's trial, so that the Abbotts will have this incentive to rally around her and back her up and find a way to keep Summer's baby daddy out of jail. Okay, YNR, I see what you're doing. I know exactly what you're doing. You are trying very actively to use Tracy, who I love, in order to try to make me like Abby. Don't think I don't know it. The YNR's giving us all these really cute moments between Abby and Tracy, and you think, YNR, that if you draw me in with Tracy, that you're just gonna bait and switch and give me Abby, and I'm refusing. I'm not gonna fall for that trick. Although I will say, the writing for Abby was excellent this week. I was very impressed. It was funny. It was fresh. I just wish that the words would have been coming out of a different actress's mouth. I'm sorry, I can't help it. But it was actually really cute. Abby and Tracy are preparing for this big Abbott family dinner, and Abby is bemoaning the fact that Tyler has changed his face-place relationship status to single. Where is Tyler? I'm surprised that he's not around. Maybe he got some other gigs or something, or the actor, I mean, but Tyler's definitely not on the scene right now. And at the same time, Tracy's kind of watching Abby spin out, going through this post-relationship breakup emotional roller coaster. And I just loved Tracy watching Abby and saying, what a culture, I mean, it's not enough to break up, but now they have to, you have to be putting it all on blast, as they say. It's such just an interesting dichotomy to see these two women who are on the surface very different but finding this in common. And it was adorable that Tracy never really thought about faceplace before, and as a result of talking with Abby, Tracy runs off into the living room and thinks about checking Steve's faceplace to see if he's changed his relationship status. And it was just funny to watch Abby kind of catch Tracy, and they start to talk. I mean, Tracy thought twice about it, like, maybe I don't really want to know. But it was this cool generational gap coming together, the two women realizing they're very far apart in age and so many other qualities, but they're in the same place somehow, finding themselves in the same place somehow. And it was just, I don't know, really sweet to see Tracy giving Abby a pep talk saying, listen, men are a luxury, not a necessity, quoting Cher. It was fun. I liked the dialogue. I thought it was really good this week. It was followed by an intensely uncomfortable family dinner. Everyone was there. Tracy, Abby, Summer shows up with her new husband, of course, can't leave him out, and naturally Jack's there. It's his house. He's there with Kelly, his new woman, and Billy finds a way to sad sack it on in, and it was really just, I mean, uncomfortable is the best word I can think to describe it. Kelly is wondering when and if Jack is going to end up blowing up her secret about Ben and her family, which we'll talk about later, trust me. And Billy is just trying to make small talk around the table. I mean, everybody is, but Billy mentions that there is a new baby coming, and Austin's totally on the outside, doesn't really know this family. He tries to inquire about, Billy's baby and says, you're expecting, oh, is this your first? And it just was like a thud right into the middle of the dining room table, where inadvertently Austin asks about Billy's child, and Billy has to, kind of bring himself to talk about what happened to Delia and tell Austin, yes, I had a daughter. She was 7. She died, and it was really sad, because now you can see that Billy's kind of in the stage where you're moving past understanding what happened, or I mean, not understanding, I'm sure you'll never understand what happened, but conceptualizing what happened, accepting what happened, and now moving on and knowing how to talk about it. I just thought it was a really interesting moment. The whole dinner was chock full of interesting / uncomfortable moments, and a lot of it was at Abby's insistence. Abby is like so bored with her own life, so she's poking and prodding at everyone, razzing on Jack for dating Kelly, razzing on Kelly for keeping family secrets, and razzing on Billy for dating Chelsea. I'm like, whoa, girl, hey, Abby, remember when you hated it when other people were up in your life? Maybe you need to check yourself. I mean, or maybe you could just change your name to Victor Newman Jr. It's such a Victor Newman-esque name. You could be Abby Victor Newman Jr. Of course, then again, we already have one of those. Damn. Last week, at the very end of Friday's show, there was a mystery hand on the door of Chelsea's condo just as she and Billy are getting ready to have sex in the living room, and I just completely assumed that it was Adam's hand, but this week we picked back up on that storyline, and it was not. It was Adam's goon, like this right-hand guy that he has. Ugh, it makes no sense. It really doesn't. Adam's intention here is totally lost on me. Adam is just becoming this really creepy force that's behind the scenes. It doesn't feel consistent with the character at all. I don't know why Adam would just be watching and monitoring Chelsea's life. Does he not have a plan for moving forward? Seemed like the only plan that he really had was to interrupt her sexy time with Billy, which was successful. But other than that, it's just him and this hand watching his computer screen. I realized this week, it dawned on me, and it's probably obvious from this coming statement that I'm a child of the 80s, but it reminded me he's like Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget. Do you remember that show? And it was, you never saw the villain, his face. You only saw him from the back, his hand and this chair. You know, it was always just this hand. And that's what we're getting from Adam. I've posted a picture of Dr. Claw at yrchat.com. I gave it a little Photoshop job there too. But so you guys, if you don't know who Dr. Claw is or not a fan of the Inspector Gadget cartoon, go to yrchat.com. I'll post that and you'll see it's basically what's going on with Adam. So this goon is able to interrupt Billy and Chelsea's intimate moment, and he goes up into Connor's room, the bugged crib nursery, and the goon opens up one of Connor's top drawers and places a handkerchief in the back of it for Chelsea to find, and she does. What it is was a wedding gift from Adam on the first time they got married. It was Hope's handkerchief, which Adam gave to her as a wedding gift on their original wedding, at the farm. And Chelsea is realizing, and clearly Adam wants her to realize that this is their original wedding anniversary, and it's causing her, of course, to think about Adam. That's exactly what Adam wants her to do. Now, Billy goes off. He has yet another heartbreaking interaction with Victoria, and he runs right back to Chelsea. After every time Billy gets turned away by Victoria, he runs right back to Chelsea and starts unloading on her. And this time it got to be really just rude. Almost. Billy comes in the door, Chelsea's sort of reeling about Adam, and Billy's complaining about Victoria shutting him down, and she is offended by it. Chelsea's offended by it. I mean, why would you, what do you want? Do you want me? Do you want your ex-wife? And I think there's this subcontext within Billy and Chelsea's relationship of, yeah, we both are completely aware that Billy still wants Victoria. It's only sort of a sideline. And I don't think that Billy really knows where Chelsea fits in his life. I don't think that he doesn't care about her, but I think he doesn't quite know where to place it. Is Chelsea a friend? Is Chelsea his girlfriend? They're sleeping together. They're not committed. They're both mourning the loss of a marriage, so maybe it's just the waters are muddy and his feelings with her are genuine, but just not defined. And I think maybe that's how she is feeling about him. Later, Kevin comes to visit Chelsea, and he has more information on Stitch. Kevin has been the only one who's really pursuing Stitch and what his secret is, and Kevin is able to show Chelsea this yearbook, and it has Ben's picture, well, it has Stitch's picture, and it has Ben Rayburn's picture, and we realize that they are contemporaries. They went to the same high school. We now know what Ben's real original name is, which opens up the door for an internet search. I mean, there's probably a ton of articles about this incident, whatever it was that Stitch did, but they realize that he killed somebody, and they go looking on the internet and seeing what it is, and it's really become a what do I do kind of situation for Chelsea. Kevin, kind of later ends up suggesting to Chelsea that maybe she got involved with Billy in the first place because she wanted to find a man that she knew she couldn't have. Chelsea is maybe looking for a placeholder until Adam comes back, which is why she is so torn about whether or not to tell Billy what she's finding out about Stitch. Chelsea is feeling compelled by Billy because he is this placeholder for Adam. I mean, if you think about it, Chelsea never saw Adam's body. She never really had closure on the situation, and she still believes, and has said many times, that she believes there's still somehow out there that Adam is alive, that he's out there, he's alive, and he is. Dr. Delicious, as Anita called Stitch this week, has had his name thrown into the hat for becoming the chief resident at Genoa City Memorial. So Stitch is in a place where he's very excited about his life right now. He's probably no stranger to skirting over the secret. He's been doing it for a really long time, but now he's finally at this point of realizing, oh my gosh, I'm in love with Victoria. I could be having a child with her, and I could be getting a promotion all at the same time. How could that go wrong? Victoria has revealed to Stitch early in the week that the paternity test is happening tomorrow. She's gonna find out who the father of this baby is, and I think Victoria is going through her own process, obviously, of not really knowing who she wants the father to be. I don't think that Victoria is even in touch with her feelings about who she loves, let alone who she wants to be the child's father. So the storyline progresses, and it becomes the day of the paternity test, and let's see, Billy stops by, and he already knows that it's paternity test day. Billy is very intent on getting his marriage back, whether his actions with Chelsea show that or not, and he tells Victoria, hey, guess what? I know it's paternity test day. I'd really like to go with you, to be there to support you, and also he wants to know immediately if this is if this is his child. But Victoria has already told Stitch that she wants to go alone, and so she has already decided that she wants to go alone, which makes me now kind of question her motives about why she wanted to go alone. She wanted Stitch to be with her at every other doctor appointment that she's ever had, and now all of a sudden at the most important and intriguing, juicy doctor's appointment, she doesn't want anyone with her. I think that says a lot right there. But the second Billy started saying he wanted to go, she says, you can't go with me because I've already asked Ben to go with me. Which is a lie. Then she has to turn around and say, oh, sorry, Stitch, I changed my mind. I would like you to go with me to the paternity test. Victoria, you are so confused, girl. So really confused. I mean, it was a straight up lie. I don't think she has, I tell you what, here's the thing. That action taken by Victoria, to me, says that she is using Stitch to hurt Billy. I'm so impressed with Kevin this week. He's been one of my favorite characters this week. Nobody else is really going out of their way to nail Stitch to the wall except for Kevin, and he's pretty well, like, not invested in this situation. All of the people that have a vested interest in finding out the truth about Stitch have really dropped the ball. It's Kevin who's dug in there and gotten the truth. He's the one who got the yearbook. He's the one who put the pieces together about Stitch's name. He's the one that probably did the Google searching. Like, it's all Kevin, and plus other things that we'll talk about later. So it's really all Kevin. He wants the truth. I mean, he this week, in an effort to find out, he steals a doctor's badge right off of his lap coat. Leslie's husband, I can't remember his name, but he steals Leslie's husband's badge right off of his lap coat, goes back to the police station, tries to see if he can hack into the hospital computer system, which is probably so criminal. I mean, he could get in big trouble for this, and yet he's willing to go this extra mile, just maybe because he needs something else to focus on besides the fact that his wife, or I guess ex-wife, is in an institution. I don't know, did they get a divorce? I'm not sure. But anyway, he's not able to hack into the computer, so he actually kind of impersonates a medical professional, whatever, he puts on a lab coat, takes that doctor's badge, gets into the hospital, and tries to just physically go into the hospital system and look up Benjamin Rayburn, and he was shock-faced to find out whatever it was that he saw. I don't know what it is that he's going to end up seeing. I'm very impressed with him, though. I think he's excellent. So Kevin is doing all of this as Billy is at Chelsea's condo, and Billy finds that yearbook sitting on the couch, and he realizes that Ben isn't who he says he is, and Chelsea's been racked with guilt about whether or not to tell Billy the truth, and she finally does tell him at least part of the story, and she has to tell him about the fake identity and the murder that he killed someone, and Billy is like, what? I told you I didn't want to know any more about the situation, but if he's a murderer hanging out with my wife and kid, I think that's grounds for you to tell me. He's supremely offended and frankly very pissed off at Chelsea for not telling him the truth sooner. I don't feel like, I mean, Chelsea had just found it out. She didn't know that Ben was a murderer for, it couldn't have been more than a day. So I wasn't mad at her. I hope she has a chance to explain it to him next week and at least save face on the friendship. But Billy didn't want to hear anything she had to say in that moment. Billy runs off to the athletic club to confront Stitch, who is in the dining room with Victoria getting ready to go to this paternity test result, or paternity test. I guess we probably wouldn't get the results even. I don't even know if the results are going to come in next week because this is just the blood work, I assume. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But rather than running into the main dining room where Stitch and Victoria are, where Billy clearly would have seen them, Billy runs upstairs to the athletic club office where Jack is with Kelly. And Jack and Kelly have been going back and forth about whether or not Jack is going to tell everyone about Ben's secret. Last week, Kelly told Jack everything, and now Jack is in a position of having the burden of this information. Not only did Kelly tell Jack about that Ben had killed a man, you know, or that he had, or no, yeah, it was last week. She said, my brother's a murderer, and then she goes on to kind of tell him, you know, the story that yes, he killed somebody, but you can't tell anyone, Jack. Kelly is all of a sudden got this sense of loyalty towards Stitch, which to me kind of came out of nowhere. It's been weeks and weeks and weeks of her resenting him, and again, I know feelings are complex, and nothing's really ever black and white when it comes to kind of matters of the heart and family and all of that. But at the same time, all of a sudden, Kelly is really defending her brother, saying to Jack, he's changed, he would never harm the Victoria or the baby, and you can't tell anyone, just trust me. And she even goes on to say, I don't want to lose my brother all over again. I'm shocked by this. I don't know when that connection happened. I must have missed it, but Jack has a brother to look out for too, and it's a brother who he's quite a lot closer with. So just right about at the perfect time, just as Kelly and Jack are going another round about whether or not Jack can tell what she's confided in him, Billy runs up into the office and he confronts them both, and he's just asking all kinds of questions. What is it? What is it that Ben did? He murdered somebody. Tell me, what's going on? And Kelly is immediately trying to cover up, but Jack cannot let this goes on. Cannot let this go on. Jack tells Billy, look, you know, I think Jack had this sense of, I don't want to be the one to tell you, Billy, and I don't want to force Kelly to tell the story again. So Jack just tells Billy where he can find Stitch. Stitch is downstairs in the dining room. Why don't you ask Stitch yourself? So Billy runs down to the dining room. Sure enough, gets up in Stitch's face. Kelly comes running down the stairs after him. Jack comes running down the stairs after her. And there's this huge confrontation. Victoria's kind of stuck in the middle thinking, ugh, this is just another one of Billy's attempts to ruin my life. But Billy is just really pressing on Stitch. Tell us what you did. And even Jack is really wanting this secret to come out. He doesn't want to hold on to it anymore. He doesn't want to watch this woman, Victoria, who at one point he saw as a daughter, then at another point saw as a sister-in-law, doesn't want to watch Victoria get involved with a murderer. So Jack says, come on, Ben, you need to tell Victoria. Tell Victoria or I'm going to tell her. And I'm just watching Stitch's face, and it's his whole world has been chipped away. It's like he's trying to build something solid. Little by little, there's been little chips at it, and he's tried to ignore it and tried to move on. And in this moment, you just saw it all crumbling down, realizing that he has no choice. This is a man who has spent so much time running from what he did, running from the truth, and now he has nowhere to run. It was good, and I saw it all on his face, and I felt so bad for him. I have not felt connected to Stitch in weeks. I mean, since all of this has been going on, I've not even really been interested in Stitch until this very moment. I wanted to know his story. All it took was for, if he just would have told me the truth from the beginning, I wouldn't have been mad at him. So I'm watching him in this moment and I'm thinking, come on, let's do it. The truth will set you free, Ben. Or blow up your world, which is really much more likely to what happened. Ben musters up the courage to say to Victoria, I mean, he's really addressing Victoria at this point because he doesn't give a care about any of these other jokers. It's about preserving his relationship with her. He says, I went to jail for killing someone, my father. I think we knew that, though. I mean, I think it was kind of, well, I mean, I don't know, maybe everybody didn't. I have the benefit of reading all of your comments every week, and so I'm pretty well, you know, I tend to be prepped more for big storyline blow-ups, because 9 times out of 10, you guys have predicted it before I ever see it on my screen, so it wasn't as big of a revelation. I kind of knew where it was going, but here are the details. The details are what was really missing. So basically, Ben and Kelly's father was a drunk bastard. Stitch is this teenager, probably got some attitude problem, especially if it's an unhappy home life situation. The father is mean to Stitch. They argued a lot, had a lot of big blow-up arguments, probably publicly even as well, even though he didn't say that. But one night, the dad is drinking in the shed, and he's all drunk. Stitch goes out there. They have an argument. The father hits Ben, or punches him, I assume, and then passes out. Now, somewhere in this process, a kerosene lamp gets knocked over. And this is the piece that I feel like I need more information about, because Ben goes on to say, you know, a kerosene lamp got knocked over. The whole place went up in flames in about 2 seconds. Stitch could only get himself out. There was no chance that he was able to save his father. Well, so does that mean that the lamp got knocked over after the fight? That seems less likely. There's only a 2-second window between that. Or, you know, I mean, I'm sure that was an exaggeration, but let's just say it's a minute. There's only a small window between kerosene lamp getting knocked over and the whole place going up in flames. Why did the kerosene lamp get knocked over? If it got knocked over by accident, it would have made more sense that it happened during the altercation, during when Stitch's father hit him or whatever. But it doesn't feel consistent to me that it accidentally got knocked over after his father had already passed out. And if that's the case, then it means Stitch did it on purpose. I feel a little bit like it's a very questionable situation, or like there's still a little bit of room to interpret there. So anyway, the barn goes up, Dad dies. The cops want to charge Ben with murder, teenager. They want to charge this teenager with murder. And I'm assuming everybody knows there's a history of kind of violence and bad feelings between them. Stitch, rather than wanting to save himself, decides to confess to killing his father because he didn't want to put his family through a long trial. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you confess that unless you were guilty? Or maybe, I don't know, his guilt was misplaced, but there's something not really adding up for me, because Stitch goes on to say, you know, like, I didn't do it. I told the cops that I didn't do it on purpose, and later on I just decided to change my story. So I don't really know what the truth is. I mean, did I miss something? Because there's a part of me that thought, well, it sounds like it was an accident. If we can take what Stitch said at face value, it was an accident, and he's not a horrible murderer. Am I missing something? Because it sort of seems like everybody's going on and on. Stitch is a murderer, he's a murderer, he's a murderer. Well, I mean, maybe technically, but then again, I think back to that conversation that he had in the chapel. Remember when he was like praying to God and saying, you understand why I did what I did? So that makes it sound like he did it on purpose. So did he do it on purpose or not? Why in our chatters? Did I miss something, or is it left intentionally vague? I don't know, but Victoria is like blown away. Maybe it's just the fact, I mean, maybe the real horror here is just the lie. I mean, he did change his identity and kind of move on with his life and try to pretend like it never happened. So Victoria, maybe it's the lie. She runs away. Billy stays behind to, kind of continue to poke and prod at Stitch. And I mean, I tell you, my jaw dropped, because Billy said to Stitch, you know, why is it that that Jenna ran away? If this is not so bad, why did Jenna run away as soon as she heard this information? Oh, I know, it's because she didn't want to tell her son Daddy killed Grandpa. I mean, whoa. That was an intense moment. Did that like shock anybody else? Daddy killed Grandpa. Ooh. That is the hotness right there on The Young and the Restless, my friends. But it also brings up a really good point. If Stitch explained this all, I need to go back and rewatch it, because if Stitch explained all of this in the same way, like to Jenna, if he explained it to Jenna in the same way that he explained it to the viewers and to Victoria just now, then what's the problem? Like, why is it enough to move halfway across the world and never let Ben see his son again? Is there more going on? Is there more to this story that I'm missing, or what? And what are the paternity test results going to be? And no matter what they are we going to be able to trust them? Because there is the preview for Monday's show in the US where Victoria is sitting at the doctor's office and telling her doctor, you know, it's time for this paternity test results and I need to be able to control the outcome. What outcome? What do you need to control? What outcome do you want, Victoria, now? I mean, does that mean that no matter what, she's going to say that the baby is Billy's? I mean, because certainly she didn't hear this whole truth about Stitch and then run to the doctor and then decide that she really needs the baby to be his. I don't know. I assume that means she's going to lie about the paternity test results. But I question whether or not she thought that from the very beginning, because thinking back to her telling both Billy and Stitch that she didn't want either of them to go with her to the doctor's office, I wonder if she knew that she needed to control that outcome all along. Maybe not. Maybe it just, if it's at face value, maybe she just didn't want to be influenced or see a disappointed face, or maybe this was just something she wanted to do privately. But I don't like, now I know she's capable of lying about it and kind of planning on lying about it, so that makes me question her. Ugh. She cannot be happy with Stitch, because they also showed this follow-up scene where Stitch goes to Victoria's house and he's like hitting on the door, and I felt so bad for him. I don't know why. I felt so bad for him. He's saying, Victoria, there's still so much I need to talk to you about. Victoria! And she's standing on the other side of the door just listening and not opening it up, so she's obviously not happy with him right now, but clearly still feeling something for him, not really knowing what to feel. I mean, Stitch and Victoria's relationship is falling apart, and somehow Jack and Kelly are stronger than ever after this. They're going on, you know, Jack's going on about, you know, why he decided to pursue this even though she asked him not to, and he just declares very romantically and suddenly and bravely, because I love you, damn it. It's time for the trial. It was like Nikki on trial rather than Ian's lawsuit against Nikki. It just seemed like it was all about putting her on the spot. And in the lead up to the actual trial, Nikki is just thinking about how horrified she is that her diary is going to be made part of public record, that she's got this battle ahead of her, that she doesn't necessarily feel strong enough, or she questions whether or not she's strong enough to handle on her own. She keeps looking at those liquor bottles off in the distance, and it's clear that she's really tempted. She's tempted to drink, and there's this scene where we see the longing for liquor in Nikki's eyes, and then she shows up a couple minutes later at Victoria's house, kind of stumbles in, and I thought, is she drunk? She says that she's had an MS flare-up, and Stitch happens to be there. I'm sure if she had liquor on her breath that they would have been able to detect that, and he would have told Victoria, because it was before all this stuff with him went down. So, I mean, is that it? Was it an MS flare-up? Did Nikki drink or not? I don't think so. I mean, she's real tempted. But I thought She was acting a little bit strange. Maybe it's just the stress, but I didn't want to forget to mention that there was a really nice mother-daughter moment there just between Victoria and her mother on the eve of this paternity test before everything went down, and Nikki was just seeming very wise in the advice she was giving Victoria and the questions she was asking of Victoria. It was like Catherine Chancellor wise. I was getting a very Catherine vibe out of that. Maybe it's also like Nikki's wardrobe, or I don't know, but I felt like Catherine's spirit sitting there in the room with them. It was nice. Now, it was almost like a calm before the storm moment, because Dylan is being forced to testify against Nikki in this civil suit. He's been called by Ian's attorney, and Paul also wants to be able desperately to testify on Nikki's behalf. Chris is not having it. Not having it at all. Chris says to Paul, "You're not her husband. She doesn't need you, you know? I mean, you're not responsible for her." And it's true. Everybody's worried about Nikki. Dylan's worried about her. Paul's worried about her, in addition to her first family, Victor, Nick, Victoria. Everybody's worried about her. And I just started thinking, as Christine's making this argument about everyone, you know, constantly falling over themselves to help Nikki, I did kind of think, you know, people do tend to coddle Nikki. And it's people sort of treat her as if she's made of paper. And I think she's a lot stronger than she's given credit for. Partly, I think that maybe people treat her that way because of Victor. Victor is a very hard man to love, and she stood by him through a whole lot. And so I just think, you know, maybe people see her like that because, you know, if Nikki's paper, Victor's rock. So I think maybe that kind of, maybe Victor influences how people look at Nikki. Do you know what I'm saying? She's trying to prepare herself. She's trying to prepare everyone else. There's also a conversation between Nikki and Dylan in the courtroom, actually, where she's telling Dylan, you know, I'm really afraid for what might come out in court today. I don't want to hurt you, but there is a part of my diary where I talked about, you know, the baby maybe causing me problems in my life. She admits that she talks about maybe her life having been easier if she hadn't been pregnant, and that was really the least of it. The way that Nikki prepared Dylan for what he was going to hear was it was nothing at all for what it really began to be. Dylan was very supportive of Nikki, of course. Everyone comes to the trial for her, there to support her. Everyone kind of vows that they're not going to think less of her because of what they hear in the diary. Well, I mean, except for Chris, there is a disgust that's radiating off of Christine that is visible. You can almost see it in marks over Christine's head. Christine was probably the only person there besides Ian and his lawyer that were really not feeling sympathetic toward Nikki, but she did have a lot of support there. The trial gets ready to begin. Ian walks in, and practically everyone was hissing at him. They all hate his guts. And I tell you, I've gone through a couple of different waves of emotion during the trial. In many ways, I felt that the trial was just as compelling as the Stitch blowing up. I thought this was a really great storyline this week. But I love Ian. I know it's horrible. I don't love who he is, but going into this trial, I just think he's such a joy. He's just such a joy to watch. He's so interesting to me. I think that Ian and the actor who plays him is one of the best things that's happened to the show in a long, long while. He's the perfect villain, and he's such a good actor. And I'm watching Ian's testimony and thinking, this is brilliant. I had sort of this weird softening toward him. The way that Ian was sitting there straight-faced, giving his testimony, claiming that he was the victim. Just so, just the way he explained himself, it was so rational. It was so reasonable. He was so calm, so collected, downright touching in certain places, saying, these people isolated me from the beginning. They tried to ruin my business. And Nicole, as he calls her, Nicole told me I had a son and I was elated to have a legacy, and then they ripped it away from me. I just thought the performance was so, it was just so good and so compelling, and then it really started all coming downhill after that. And I really felt bad as the storyline progressed that I was sort of on Ian's side. It's really horrible, and I'm mad at myself about it. But oh, by the way, I cannot forget to mention this. During right after Ian's testimony, Victor gets a text message from Connie. And I wanted to say this last week because Connie was mentioned last week. Do you guys remember? Do you remember Victor's assistant, Connie? She used to actually be on the show, but it was kind of funny to see Victor's phone come up with Connie as the person he was getting a text message from. She's telling him something about Phyllis, or that the hospital Phyllis is in, somebody needs to talk to him or whatever. And he actually left the trial, or stepped out for a moment, and I was kind of mad at him there for a minute, like, come on, Victor, everybody is there for Nikki. You can take this text message later. You do not need to get up and deal with it. It just bothered me. But anyway, the next person to take the stand was Dylan, and he was a very hostile witness. It was a quick and intense questioning. Of course, Dylan blew up. Dylan's always blowing up, and I'm constantly thinking that he's going to kill Ian, or that's where we're headed with this, because Dylan is so angry. None of it compared. Everything paled in comparison to Nikki's testimony. It entailed, it was really like a nightmare realized for her. And all of a sudden, I felt so bad for her. I felt so bad for kind of cheering Ian on in the previous moments and in the previous weeks, because she really explained her side of the situation, and what a horrible monster he really was. I cried when when Nikki turned to Victor right before she took the stand and just implied that she was embarrassed to read this diary, knowing she's gonna have to read from her diary in front of this room full of people. And Victor just knew, he just understood, and totally redeemed himself for taking that text message. He took Nick out into the hall and just asked him to stay out, to not go back in there. Your mother appreciates your support, but if you love her, please understand she doesn't want to say this in front of you. And I thought, like, he should have chased out of the room Avery too. Avery didn't need to hear all of that. I think Nikki should not maybe even have had Dylan in there. Nikki goes on to describe in detail about her repeated rape and battery by this man. Not only did he rape her repeatedly, but he was smacking her around too, and just sick and viciously controlling her mind and her body and her spirit. And it was so hard to hear her describe that. I can't believe, I just feel like Avery had no business being there listening to this very private moment. I think that it probably would have been better for Dylan not to be there. I can understand where she was coming from. I didn't know that she went through this. It was really horrible listening to her talk about it in detail. It definitely made Ian look way less awesome. I'm kind of mad about that, because it sort of shattered my Ian love. I wanted to like this character. Now, how can I like him at all after this? It's just not even possible. Of course, then again, it's so bland. If Michael Baldwin could be reformed, then so could Ian. Michael Baldwin tried to rape Christine, and now here he is doing cross-examination on Nikki, talking about her rape. Of course, I don't think Michael actually did rape Christine, but he wanted to. He was going to. He was working on it. He was building a tunnel toward it. So, I don't know. Of course, I think, you know, what would be interesting to me is to find out that Ian was actually Michael's father or something. It's harder to believe that Michael has River as a father that's hippie. It would make more sense if it was someone sadistic like Ian. It was an experience. It was really hard to watch Nikki. It was hard to watch Victor's face too. I mean, did he have any idea about this? Forget about the pregnancy. Did Victor have any idea that Nikki was raped and battered? It all makes sense now, but I know it was tacked on, so that's probably ridiculous, but it's just insane. I don't know how much Victor knew. I don't know to what extent this was part of the original story. I mean, for those of you who were watching when this was originally going on, was there an implication that Nikki was being raped? Or, I mean, I know that Ian Ward was a part of the storyline back then, but I think they just referred to him as a cult leader, and maybe it was weird and he was controlling and all that, but did they talk about him repeatedly raping her and beating her? Please tell me, because I would really love to know that. I don't know how much of this is new information, how much of it's part of the original story. I don't know how Nikki had this diary for the entire time and not remember that for she kept this diary for 30 years and did not even remember that she was pregnant. I don't know how that works either, because listening to Nikki's diary as she's reading it, it seems like she's pretty aware of herself. But I guess she also went on to say that she felt like this child was a constant, finding out that she's pregnant, finding out that this child is a constant reminder of this horrible thing that she's been through, which I'm sure is a very common feeling, or a very real feeling for anyone who's ever been a rape victim and then gotten pregnant. I mean, I can understand why she didn't want to pursue the child. She didn't have an abortion. She actually went through with the pregnancy, and she did the best she could, giving the child away. I mean, the whole thing was brutal. The cross-examination was brutal. I don't know when the heck Mitchell Sherman's son became such a beast, because he was really drilling down on Nikki. You didn't want that child, did you? I mean, Mitchell Sherman was like this old kind of unassuming, kind-looking tax attorney, or family. He was like family law. He was drawing up wills, and I mean, he wasn't really like going to town on anyone like a sleazy defense attorney. And that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from Mitchell Sherman Jr. He's kind of sexy though. He's a little sexy. He kind of reminds me of a young Steve Connolly. Anybody else? Can you see that comparison a little bit? I think maybe we need to introduce him to Tracy and get her juices flowing again. Ugh, it was really bad. Nikki's like breaking down in tears. Dylan is freaking out. And the judge is like, objection, objection. And Paul's face was horrified too. Paul is sitting there watching this, and presumably he's like thinking, I didn't know anything about any of this. I got the impression that this was news to Paul. So I felt bad for him watching his face. I mean, I also, oddly, it's kind of weird, because I think he felt sympathy for Nikki, but I wonder if Chris constantly buzzing in his ear affected his feelings toward her at all, because there's this moment after the trial where Paul and Dylan are out in the hallway together, and Paul's saying how sorry he is that he feels robbed. He feels like he didn't get to have an experience of his son's childhood, and just that all of this with Ian Ward is such a sideline, when, I mean, maybe that's not the right word, but in Paul's life, like, none of this really ever had to happen if Paul just would have known that the child was his. And I wonder if he was resenting Nikki just a little bit, now that it's starting to sink in that she never told him that she was pregnant. I mean, Chris made the argument of like, how close could you really have been with Nikki if she never even told you about any of this? So I don't know. Ian is very happy with himself after all of this, by the way. He's come in. There was a brief scene at the end of after the trial was over. I assume maybe next week we're going to hear the judgment, and I assume Ian's not going to win, right? He's not going to win. But Ian takes a phone call from Mariah, and she says, so did you get a piece of those Newman millions? And he's like, well, I think it went very well. But this is not the only angle I'm working on. And he says something to the effect of like, yeah, even if this whole lawsuit thing doesn't work out, it's not the only iron I've got in the fire. So what else is Ian up to? And I tell you, part of me kind of wonders if maybe, like, Austin this week stayed behind as Summer went off to visit Phyllis. He probably can't cross state lines, I assume. But he mentioned he also has an interview as a cameraman. I kind of wonder if he's lying. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being suspicious or whatever, but I wonder if the other iron that Ian has in the fire is a connection to Austin, who's now got another in with the Newman family. Victor's working overtime to try to make sure that Phyllis gets admitted into this clinical trial that's going to magically bring her out of her coma, and he's kind of working a roundabout with it. Like, he doesn't want anyone in Phyllis's family to know he's doing this. He wants to try to circumvent some of the other hospital officials. Victor he's being sneaky and shady when it comes to this whole Phyllis waking up thing, but oddly, I'm not mad at him. I'm not mad at him at all. I'm looking forward to seeing the new Phyllis. Can't wait to see how it's gonna turn out. My only thing is, I'm thinking, Victor, why couldn't you have come up with this idea a year ago? You're working on it so hard now. Why couldn't you have worked on it a year ago? It's your granddaughter's mother. You knew this. You knew a year ago that she could have helped out with this Sharon revelation. So why now? I know, because we got a recast. Oh, I know, because Michelle Stafford went to General Hospital, and then Y&R was like, well, fine, then we'll just recast you. Yeah, going to work on your web series, my butt. Got a better offer. So Summer also goes to Phyllis, by the way, to tell her about her marriage. And, you know, she's talking to Phyllis by her bedside and saying, you know, we're so in love and I'm married and everything in my life is finally getting back on track. I'm feeling like Jack is finally like my dad. And oh, just as soon as Summer mentions Jack is my dad, a hand on the Phyllis begins to move. Hilary and Neil go to the underground and they're kind of on a little mini date, and I noticed that they both order water since Neil is a recovering alcoholic, and I couldn't help but be reminded that Hilary is another character who has gone through this reformation. She's a reformed bad girl. Remember when she was spiking his drink? And now she's married to him. She's done him no favors at all. I mean, right from posting his private diary on GC Buzz to spiking his drink to marrying him when she's really in love with his son. It's kind of ridiculous. The whole storyline is becoming ridiculous now. I'm kind of getting tired of it. I was into it a whole lot for a while, and now it's just getting really schmaltzy and predictable. And I mean, of course, Hilary and Neil are out at the bar, and who shows up? Devon, and he has to sit down at the booth with them and be a third wheel, and they're going on this, they come up with this bar bet between Devon and Neil, and everybody else gets in on it, and the grand prize was tickets to Neil's tickets to a baseball game with his wife. Why? Why would Neil make the grand prize a place to go somewhere privately with his wife? Neil is it's so freaking dense, and it was just so, I don't even know what the word for it is, just, I guess, predictable and schmaltzy. I mean, grand prize is Devon and Hilary get to go off together. Oh, and then guess what? Neil has a sudden business meeting that he has to go to in Hong Kong. Oh, and then guess what else? Devon has to drive Hilary home privately. Oh, and then guess what else? The car dies. And they're stuck together in a car with only their lust and desire. It's freaking ridiculous. And I would love to know, how does Christophe St. John feel about the fact that his character is being used as such a huge tool for this relationship? It's like Neil doesn't even matter to anyone anymore. If he doesn't matter to his family, how's he gonna matter to the fans? Casting alert, casting alert. Big flashing red lights. Shemar Moore is returning briefly to Y&R. Did you guys hear this news? Whoa. Apparently he's gonna be coming back for 2 episodes. It's gonna air in mid-September. I think it was September 10th and 11th. I saw this update. I will tell you, chills went through my whole body. My brain went numb there for a minute. My body was all chilled up. I like Shemar Moore as Malcolm. I mean, or I did at the time. I mean, I instantly cannot help but be flashed back to the Shemar Moore days, which to me in my mind was the heyday of the Winters family. It's so weird to look at the Winters, the almost non-existent Winters family right now, and then think about the Shemar Moore days. I mean, it was like, wow, Neil and Malcolm and Drew and that whole triangle. And I mean, I guess maybe it was just my heyday with them because I didn't watch, I wasn't watching before that when Neil, I didn't see Neil and Drusilla's meeting and courtship, and I'd never really experienced her as the dancer. Like by the time I came along in like 94, Neil and Drew were pretty solid in their marriage, and I think they were bringing in Shemar Moore maybe to throw a little bit of some spice into that set of storylines. But I enjoyed it. I remember Malcolm hanging out shirtless a lot in his photography studio. I remember the love triangle. I remember Malcolm's deathbed marriage to Keisha. That was really sad. I think she had AIDS, right? I want to say, or cancer, but I think it was AIDS. I mean, and he married her like on her deathbed. I almost can't believe I can remember that because she was such a minor character in the whole landscape of Y&R. But I guess I just must have connected in, or I was very into it at the time. I remember Malcolm later developing his friendship with Phyllis, and that was really cool. I'm not sure what to expect. It's only for a couple of days, and I almost wonder if it's Y&R being like, ugh, the Winters are kind of screwy right now, let's get Shemar Moore, because he could have come back at any time for a little bit or for a stint. I mean, they recast him. I had no problem with the Darius McCrae recast. I was for it. I think more because I think the Winters family needs something besides Neil. I mean, they're hardly existent. So I'm excited about this. I'm really not sure what to expect from Shemar Moore. I haven't followed him since he left the show. I mean, every once in a while, like, I'll see a Criminal Minds commercial. I mean, he's still within the CBS family, but that kind of show is just not my style. And I typically don't follow actors once they leave the show. So I don't know what to expect from him. It's been nearly a decade since I've even seen him really, or seen him act. It's been like since 2005. So, gosh, I mean, do you remember when, I guess Shemar Moore, he was on the show for a while, right? But then I think somewhere around the time of Drew's death maybe, or I don't know, but remember how he went away and he spent some years in Africa. I don't remember why, or if it was connected to Drew's death. I might just be connecting that because I know Drew died in Africa, but Shemar Moore went away for a while and then he came back all hardcore. He had been like spending time in the African jungle. He came back with dreads. it wasn't very long lived, but it was an interesting transition from the kind of bubbly sort of boy band version of Malcolm, and then now the Malcolm that came back was hardcore Africa dreads. Muscles, tattoos. Oh, goodness. So that's the main casting news, but also there's more. Apparently YNR is planning, or I guess they've already filmed, I don't know, or I don't know when it's going to air, but there's going to be a Catherine Chancellor memorial episode, or I don't know how it's going to be addressed within the show. I don't really know any of the details. I only know that Murphy is returning. I love Murphy. I'm going to be so excited to see him. And also, by the way, Tricia Cast is coming back, so we're going to see Nina for that memorial. And I don't know why they ever got rid of her in the first place. I have no idea why Nina is not on my screen right now and every day for the past year. But I'm happy that she's coming back. I hope that maybe they have some kind of long-term plans for her, because now as things are kind of becoming more complex with Paul and Christine's marriage and throwing Nikki into the mix, I think Nina might be a good person to throw in there too. Okay, it's time to read your comments. I'm gonna start out with Gary this week. Left me a voicemail to say he hates Shemar more. Of course I'm going to have to mention that. I intentionally tried to make sure, Gary, that I lushed emotion onto Shemar Moore and told you how much I loved him just because I know you hate him. I mean, I'm sure you're not the only one who feels that way. You guys, everybody will have to let me know. How do you feel about the Shemar Moore coming back onto the show, even if briefly? Are you a fan or not? Because I do think that he really was a fan favorite. Maybe that's part of the reason, Gary. But, well, actually, Gary says he kind of reminds me of like a Chippendales dancer type, very cheesy, like spending all that time shirtless. I totally know what you're saying, though. I completely get it. And I think that whole like cheesy Chippendales shirtless Malcolm, Shemar Moore's Malcolm, existed for a kind of, it was his heyday period somewhere in there in the 90s. But I think, Gary, the character did evolve past that. I think you remember the 90s Shemar Moore and not when he came back angry dreads, because don't forget about that. It wasn't as memorable and it wasn't very long lived. But I think what the elements that's really missing here is the fact that a decade has gone by since even Angry Dread Malcolm. I think that we should leave a little bit of room for possibility of acting growth. I mean, you know, it's just like it is now. I mean, the Shemar Moore in 1990 is probably the equivalent of the guy who plays Tyler now. I mean, YNR, it was the beginning of them bringing on models who weren't necessarily experienced in acting. Not saying any of them are bad or that Shemar Moore is bad. I don't think he was bad. But I think it's sort of, it's that vibe, you know? It's like we're a pretty boy and there's not a whole lot going on behind the eyes. But now that a decade has gone by, Shemar Moore has been working steadily on TV. So I'm going to give him some slack and think that maybe the acting could be good. Open your mind a little bit, Gary, and think maybe this could be a good version of Malcolm. It's only for 2 days, so you only got to put up with it 2 days, even if it's bad. My only fear is that, again, a decade's gone by. I don't know how old Shemar Moore is now. I only have seen little glimpses of him, and my only fear is I'm afraid he's gonna look plastic. I don't know why, but it's like as actors age out in Hollywood, you know, they gotta do the Botox and this and that, and when you follow them regularly, you don't notice it in increments, but when a decade's gone by since you've seen somebody and then you see them, you know if they've had some plastic surgery going on. They don't call it plastic surgery for no reason. It's like plasticky. I hope he doesn't look plasticky. But one other point that Gary made that I thought was really good and I wanted to mention, and I think, Gary, you were kind of joking and saying this offhand, but you had mentioned that Burgess Jenkins would have been a good Adam. And I thought, you know, yeah, actually, I think that Burgess Jenkins would have been a good choice for the role of Adam, more so than Billy, anyway. I mean, shoot, to be Adam, all you really gotta do is stand there and be brooding and not say much and then just throw out a quip here and there. I mean, it's probably a really hard role to recast, but is it that hard? You can't find anybody to play him? I think old Burgess would have probably been pretty good for it. All right, let's move on. Bobby Thompson on Facebook says, Victoria is acting like one giant hormonal emotion. Where did the business-savvy woman go who pondered ideas, not just acted on her emotions? She's been going downhill since her stellar acting when Dee died. P.S. No one really works anymore. Remember when the characters used to work? Dylan wiping out coffee mugs is about the only hint that folks in Genoa City have meaningful jobs. Oh, amen. On every level, I agree about Victoria. I feel like I had kind of said that a couple weeks ago, just in general. Like, it just feels like Victoria is not the strong woman that I guess I thought she was. I think it was her relationship with Billy that really made her much more putty. That's kind of when I started noticing a change in the character. But you also make a really good point about the jobs. I mean, we saw like Victor in the Newman boardroom one time last week, and when was the last time you saw any business offices? No, I guess that's not true because we saw Jabot. But I think the larger point that you're making, Bobby, is that we don't get a sense of them working. You know, they don't, there's very little folders that they're carrying. There's very little sense of it. I agree. Keebler Alves on YouTube says, I'm over Kelly, her family secrets, and her flat hair. Keebler Alves said a couple of other things, but that was for some reason the piece that I really honed in on because Kelly's hair is on my nerves. It's not the actress's fault. I don't blame the actress at all. The styling is horrible. Did you see her hair this week? During the big Stitch reveal, did you see her hair? Go to yrchat.com because I'm going to put up a picture, just in case you missed it, of Kelly's hair. They styled, it's like back and a half, her bangs are like up and scrunched forward real high and to a point. It looks so bad. It's the hairstyle that I basically had when I was in grade school. It's not becoming of a woman of her age, stature. It just looks bad. And again, not the actress's fault, but somebody needs to have a conversation with ye old YNR stylist. Ellen C. at yrchat.com left a really good comment. YNR has a real believable villain in Ian. So why do they write these dumb storylines about supposed murderers like Adam and Stitch? Adam is guilty of covering up an accident caused by Delia's negligent father, not even close to a murder. Now Stitch is guilty of fighting with a drunk, abusive father as a juvenile, and he's being labeled a murderer too. I totally agree. I don't know if I can sit through months and months of dumb dialogue about Stitch the cold-blooded killer, and when Adam comes back, there will be more of the same. It's so repetitive, and no one ever points out the other side of the story. And are we supposed to believe that Stitch served in the army, went to medical school, and became a doctor all based on a false identity? No background checks along the way? Dumb. Oh, Ellen C. Very good. Very good. Connor left me a voicemail this week with a devious a storyline idea. Connor says, prepare yourself for this. What if Christine stole Victoria's baby to try to get revenge on Nikki? Ooh, you do have a devious mind, Connor. I kind of like that idea because it would be like an opportunity for a whole new version of Chris. Chris has never been anything but all together. She's on top of her life, and to watch her slowly peel away and maybe come down onto some level of insanity. Not that I want to see Victoria's baby stolen, but you know, I mean, you know what though? We've had a lot of stolen babies. Might need to back up on the stolen babies. But it's a good idea. Francis Cole Whitlow on Facebook reminds me, I asked last week what the name of the new detective we have in Genoa City is, and she reminded me Detective Harding is the new cop. Not sure of his first name, but Detective Harding. I don't think they've told us his first name. Of course, I wouldn't have remembered it anyway, but good old Detective Harding. Thank you for answering that question, Francis. And if anybody wants to tell me what that pattern is at the Sky Bar, you'll have to let me know about that too. So those are all the comments for this week, but hey, leave me a comment on, there's a billion different ways, wirechat.com, voicemail, Twitter, Facebook. Leave me your comment and I may work it into next week's YNR chat. All right, everybody. I hope you have a good week. Stay tuned for next week's YNR. Hopefully, we're going to find out some paternity test results, maybe some trial results, and who the heck knows what else. I'll be tuned in, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys again next Sunday. Everybody, take care. I love you. Bye.